Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Jason Vincent. I am a wedding and documentary photographer based in Northwest Arkansas. And today I am talking to Vanessa Joy, who is a Canon explorer of light. And she was amazing enough to hop on here and talk to us about the new R6 from Canon, which she had some pre-production access to. So she has some insight into all of the goodies. So Vanessa, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fairly well. For those that might not know who you are, why don't you give us a brief little outline of what you do?
Yeah, so I'm in the New York, New Jersey area. I'm a wedding and portrait photographer. It used to be mostly weddings. Now it's mostly portraits because of weddings not happening so much. And I've been a professional photographer for about 20 years, a full-time one, I think, for around 12. And in my past life, I used to be a Spanish teacher.
Awesome. So primarily weddings, and then you also do some education stuff, right?
Yes, well, there is that whole side of things. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do a lot of education. I used to travel all around the world and speak at all the conferences, and now you can pretty much just find me on my YouTube channel and on Adorama's YouTube channel as well.
Okay, very cool. What kind of stuff do you like to teach? Is it mostly like posing or how to shoot, lighting, all that fun stuff, or a little bit of everything?
What I'd like to teach is what people don't actually want to learn about, and that's marketing and business. So
That's not the fun
I
stuff.
no, it's not. But second to that, I like teaching about flash, which is ironic. I actually recently wrote a book about off-camera flash, and I never thought I would because for the longest time I was, a self-touted natural light photographer, and I didn't want to use flash. I didn't like the way it looked, and the truth was I just didn't know how to use it. So now I enjoy really making flash accessible to people who don't know how to use it or think that it won't match their style of photography. So that I do enjoy, kind of opening up new doors for people.
Yeah, that's very cool. I always love the
Yeah.
conversation with natural light photographers, and you
Yes.
always find out that they just don't know how to use flash. And it's like,
Hmm.
and then
Very
later
true.
on, like a year later, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I started using Flash and it's so much fun." And it's like, yeah. It's like
Yes.
it's a stepping stone. Like you always have to like find your way down that path eventually.
You do, because you get bored, and that's really what happened with me. I got bored with natural light. Sure, there's a million ways to use it, but then you want to move on. You want to create outside of the limitations of your environment.
Right. Or you get frustrated constantly finding yourself in a situation that you can't shoot
Really.
very well because the lighting is terrible.
Yes,
Yeah.
which happens in weddings every
All the
time.
time. Yeah. Like literally every single groom's quarter is in the basement with no window.
Hmm.
And it's always like,
Yeah, they don't give the groom any love when it comes to natural light.
no, exactly. So you had access to the Canon R6, correct?
That is
Okay,
correct.
so tell us a little bit about what that was like getting a pre-production model to have fun with.
It was a lot of fun. So, Canon told me about the R5 and the R6 side by side, and I know the R5 is kind of the hype, but I almost liked, well, I did like the idea of the R6 a little bit more because I felt like, along with a lot of other cameras, you have like the professional line and then you have the little bit less than, and that little bit less than reaches a wider audience.
Mhm.
And since I do enjoy teaching photography to people who are not uber professionals, I felt like the R6 would actually be better for me. And then when I pitched the idea for the commercial I ended up making for them, it was really all about non-professional photographers. I did an entire commercial that focused on a travel vlogger, makeup YouTube tutorial person, DJ. The DJ audience is a very wide photo and video audience that most people are completely unaware even exists.
Mhm.
And then focusing on moms and regular hobbyist street photographer. So I liked it, and I knew where the price point was kind of going to be. They gave me a range, so that also makes it a little bit more accessible to people who are, not first time camera buyers, but at
Mhm.
least maybe not quite professional, but a little bit more advanced.
Yeah, and I mean, even a lot of professional photographers like that, like mid-range,
Mhm.
because they don't need that high-end stuff, and it makes it a little bit more accessible to have backup bodies or shoot two bodies and all that fun stuff too, or at least have matching bodies as well, because it's a big
Right.
price jump to get two R5s compared to two R6s.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
be perfectly fine with all of my second shooters shooting with the R6.
yeah. So what's your main body before you had the R6?
I still use the 1DX3
Okay.
and I have the EOS R as well. So I shoot both mirrorless and and DSLR.
Okay. Do you find yourself, or do you think you'll pick up the R6 as like a main camera, or do you think you'll pick up the R5, or where do you see yourself going?
Can I be really honest? I
Yeah.
just don't know. I just don't know. I really don't, because the R5 is very appealing because of all the extra video capability, and we do a lot of video, and my husband is a videographer. He already told me he wants the R5. And the R6, it's almost hard for me to convince myself that I couldn't use the R6 when I really think I can, and at that much less of a price. Was it $1,400 less? You know, it's almost like, well, why not have the R6? So, and then I still love my 1DX3. So I don't know. I probably am just gonna find an excuse to have every single one of them and pick which one I'm gonna use. Like I pick out my clothes that day.
Exactly. Like, what am I shooting? Then we'll grab this one, grab
Yeah.
that one. The good thing about the R5 and the R6 is that they have the exact same ergonomics though. So that's a benefit,
Yes.
at
Oh,
least.
that was the best thing. You know, I wrote an article on F-stoppers probably 6 years ago now, all about how I could not shoot mirrorless professionally. I got beat up like crazy, but I still stand. Everybody does, but I still stand by it. You know what mirrorless was at that time.
Right.
So it did take me a really long time to, you know, kind of transition. And I got my hands on the EOS R, and the learning curve was, in my opinion, extensive. It took a long time for me to really feel actually comfortable with that camera. But the R6, once I put that in my hand, all my fingers just went to the right spots.
Hmm.
It's exactly what, you know, not exactly, but close enough to what like a 5D4 felt like at the
Yeah.
time. And I didn't have to think. I didn't have to take a second and wonder where's the ISO, where's the this, and where's the white balance. It's just, I knew where it was. And I think so much of people who are still shooting DSLR and moving on to mirrorless, they need that. They need some kind of familiarity. Otherwise, it's too much of a learning curve is just a hurdle.
Yeah. So coming from the 1DX and the R, what has been your favorite new feature on the R6?
Oh, you know, it's probably having the dial back for the mirrorless camera.
Uh-huh.
It's also the EVF. I find a lot easier to look through. At times, I would even forget I was shooting a mirrorless camera. The weight of the body, I didn't shoot it with a battery grip. I do have the battery grip on my R, but the weight of it is lighter. You could just kind of toss it around. I actually had two of them, so I did a whole vlog, New York City, during COVID times, like a lot of people did, and just
Yeah.
drove around in my car and didn't get out because, you know, we shouldn't
Yeah.
or whatever. But I was able to, while I had one hand on the camera here, I would do this and videotape myself taking pictures. And I was able to like two camera maneuver.
Yeah. And it
And
wasn't
not,
too cumbersome. Like,
no, it wasn't. At least in comparison to the 1DX3 I'm shooting with mostly.
right. Yeah. You don't want to do that with the 1DX.
Mhm.
So with the 5 and the 6 being out at the same time, is there anything, like most people are concentrating on the R5? Is there anything about the R6 that you feel like is like flying under the radar that you feel like people should talk about, or something that has you excited about it?
I would say you just have to think about what your needs are. That's what excites me about the R6, is that it does fulfill so many of those needs. And I know people are talking about how, you know, it doesn't have all eye, I guess compression, but for the person who's a content creator that's not really seriously editing video, or someone who's really just doing, like I mentioned, those YouTube makeup tutorials, things like that, those things are unnecessary for them, at least at that time. So the R6 answers the needs for so many things, when in people's heads, I know, especially people who aren't super camera techie, they think in their heads, oh, well, this one's 45 megapixels, this one's 20, so the 45 must be better. And it's never about that.
Yeah.
It's about, what do you need? And does this fulfill what you need, or is it overkill? At the same time, though, I do have to say, I tend to think of cameras as not really investments, because they always go down in value, but I think about resale value later. So between the R5 and the R6, you know what, the R5 is probably going to hold its value a little bit longer. So
Yeah.
that's something to think about too.
Yeah. Are there, after playing with the R6 for a while, was there any features that you feel like it was missing, or something like when the R6 Mark II comes out that you hope they add, or something they add via firmware update or anything like that?
Well, the firmware update, adding the all eye, I think would be useful because then a lot of other videographers would pick it up. There wasn't anything that I felt was missing. I'm trying to think if I ever had like that moment where I was like, oh, I wish I could do this.
Hmm.
The one thing I did have a hiccup on, I didn't realize it was an HDMI, a micro HDMI. I thought it was a mini HDMI. So we were going to hook the R6 up to a PC and Camlink or whatever
Yeah.
he had, because it was a gamer, a streamer that we were working with. And I go to plug in my mini HDMI out and I'm like, oh my God. And this was at the time where no stores are open at
Yeah.
all. And I'm so far from home. And I think we have a micro HDMI here. And I remember just calling a friend of mine. I'm like, do you have a micro HDMI? It's the little things like that. And it's fine now that you know what it is. But
Yeah,
for
you just
everyone
have to
else,
know what it is. Yeah.
micro, it's a micro.
Oh man, that's good to know. So currently where you have, like where you stand right now with your kit, if you're walking out the door, what camera and lens are you going to grab? Just what, like one
Well,
camera, one lens, what are you going to walk out the door with?
well, I don't have the R6 in hand, but if I did,
If you did.
it would be that and the 28 to 72.0.
Yeah.
Yeah, that lens, it's crazy. Right now, what I do, I walk out for that newborn session that I just did yesterday, or a maternity session, something that's not a wedding, because obviously wedding I carry a lot more. I just walk out of the house with my EOS R, the 28 to 72.0, and my EF 135.20 with the adapter, and that's it. And I don't have to change my lenses hardly at all, because that 28 to 70 just encompasses everything,
Hmm.
with the exception of a little bit longer. And that's all I need. That's it. It's pretty nice. And I know that lens is expensive. It's $3,000, but it's replacing 3 lenses,
Hmm.
3 prime lenses. So if you look at it that way, it's actually a deal. And then
Yeah.
you don't have to constantly switch back and forth. And I'm the biggest advocate of prime lenses in the world, but it's great. It's so
Yeah.
nice.
And even on a wedding, like you can shoot an entire wedding with it. You have a lot more
Hmm.
gear, just doesn't have to be on you. It's like you have your backup gear in
Yeah.
case you need it. But for the most part, you could just walk around with one body, one lens and be absolutely totally fine.
Yeah, because even with the primes, sure, my 50 and 85 or whatever go down to 1.2, 1.4, but I never shoot that low,
Yeah.
almost ever. I will say with the more advanced autofocus, I found myself shooting a little bit lower. So I tested out the R6 and the new 85 2.0
Hmm.
that just came out at the same time with my 2-year-old son. And I just tested it with him running around like a lunatic, like he normally does. And he's running towards me and away and back and forth. And I was shooting him at 2.0, and the eye focus was just dead on. It was shocking. I think with the R6, the 1DX3 in live view, and the R5, and even the EOS R, it's taken the difficulty out of focusing. Focusing used to be like an art, I remember hand focusing, manual focus, like push pull lenses that
Yeah.
would focus with the push and pull. And it was so difficult. And now with the deep learning tech and the eye detection, and now animal eye detection, it's just completely taken away that difficulty level.
Yeah.
It's really
Even
not
though,
going to be good for everyone. I thought I had something there that was an edge. I knew how to focus really well, but now it doesn't matter.
yeah, even the old art of like having to focus and recompose because you didn't have
Yes.
enough focus points. Like you only had like
Hmm.
4 in the little center. And so you had to always like constantly focus and recompose. And now it's like the focus
Yeah.
points are all over the entire screen. So it's like, you don't have to focus and recompose. There's always a focus point, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
And if you were shooting shallow, it was never focus and recompose. It was focus and pan.
Yeah.
So that you would keep that tiny little plane of focus.
Exactly. So whenever you were shooting the R6, how long did you have it before the announcement?
I had it very early on, and then I had to give it away early on. So I actually shipped mine to Roberto Valenzuela in California. He was actually one of the lucky ones that got to play with both the R5 and
Okay.
the R6.
Yeah.
So I think I had it for a total of a month and a half, maybe. I had it for a good amount of time because it was right at the beginning of COVID, and when they still had the previous launch date before the world erupted. So I had it, and then I couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
And then I'm still holding on to it. I'm like, can I have this a little longer until I can find some people who will do the things that we needed to get done? When we were filming, it was the amount of time where you were allowed to have 10 people inside. and I knew I wanted to film a DJ scene
Hmm.
and in a nightclub. I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So what we did is my downstairs studio has brick on it. We had one of my DJ friends come, and a I think there was 4 people in the audience, and then also myself. And then I bought mannequin heads and wigs. And I made it, we shot through it. Like if you look at the R6 video that we made for them,
Uh-huh.
it looks like there's more people there. There's not more people.
That is so funny. That's like an old school like film trick when you
Hmm.
can't find enough extras. It's like just throw
Yes.
mannequin.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
Did
we
you?
ended up, I think there were 8 people in the room, so we were still within laws.
Yeah. Were you super paranoid about like people finding out like what it was? Did you have to have like tape on it and all kinds of stuff, or did you not really have to worry about it?
So if Canon was next to me, and I did one of the new product announcements for the 5D Mark IV, and I've done it for their lenses. Usually, Canon accompanies the camera and the lenses to whatever shoot it is, and they're very careful about it. If there's anyone in the 100-foot radius, like, you are not to take that camera out.
Yeah.
But they weren't with me, so I may have been a little less than careful. I took
What
it
did-
out in the middle of Central Park, but again, you can't tell. Like, you're holding that, you're
yeah.
looking at it from far away. It just looks like you're holding a 5D4 or a 60D or something like that.
Yeah.
You can't tell until you actually see the little 6 next to
Yeah.
the
Unless
R,
someone
which is,
gets super close and they like
yeah,
are super nerdy,
yeah.
like most photographers, unfortunately. But yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, had there been any actual photographers there, they probably would have noticed.
Yeah, for sure. So where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube. I actually just hit 20,000 subscribers today. So I've been at it for 7 months. So I think that's pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm having fun with it. I'm lucky to have an in-house production team with my husband shooting video. So I'm
Very
I'm
cool.
pretty lucky. Yeah.
What kind of content are you putting out on YouTube?
A lot of it is gear, because I found that's what a lot of people want.
Hmm.
So, you've got a lot of gear reviews on there. I have a lot of shoots, definitely some stuff on flash, some interesting flash techniques. If somebody watching wants to see a very interesting flash technique, I call flashing yourself. That's a pretty fun video. So if you just go to my YouTube channel, it's just youtube.com/Vanessa Joy and search "Go Flash Yourself." You'll find it.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate you hopping on here with me
Yeah,
and giving us some insight into the new gear. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Talk to you later.